Wow, that's that whole movie and Leonard's speech is really overwhelming for me. To be standing here in front of you with this recognition, I greatly appreciate it. I want to thank Leonard so much for everything that he's done and his praise and tribute. And I can't tell you how grateful and lucky I've been to be able to work with Leonard for the last 20 years, and what a truly great man he is in so many ways, personally and professionally. It's really very inspiring. He's a very, very inspiring person. And and to all of you, our honored guests, and to our Alzheimer ADDF Board of Governors and Overseers and the ISOA Board of Directors, the Lauder Family Office, which has been so helpful to us over the years, and our terrific ADDF staff, both on the business side, the development side, and our wonderful scientists and scientific staff. I want to thank everyone so much for this extraordinary honor and making my work possible, our work possible. I really want to thank everyone so much. When Randall Sandler, our vice chairman, our terrific vice chairman, told me that I was going to be this year's honoree and receive a Lifetime Achievement Award, I was both surprised and humbled. I was surprised because I thought our work isn't done, so how could we say that it's a lifetime achievement when we have so much work ahead of us to eradicate Alzheimer's disease from our lives? And I was so humbled because I feel so privileged to lead this foundation and to be given such an important position from which I can contribute to the fight against Alzheimer's. And to be honest, I've had an incredibly rewarding journey. I've been very lucky. I've been a neuroscientist for over 50 years, and I'm only 29 years old, so that's really amazing. But I know most of you may not get this, but neuroscience is a fascinating, creative art of ultimately useful purpose. And for 35 years, I've been a geriatrician, sort of an unusual doctor, but I've had the great privilege to care for people with Alzheimer's disease. But I have to say, perhaps most of all, that I'm unusual but so fortunate to be in a position at ADDF where I can combine these two careers, these two professions, to be a physician scientist. My passion for Alzheimer's disease began in 1980 when I first visited the first academic teaching nursing home in the United States and the site of the first geriatric medicine fellowship training program in the United States. And what I saw that day shocked me. There were 300 people in this quite nice building suffering and dying from a disease that I had never heard of, despite 10 years of prior medical training and practice. And this one day changed the course of my entire life. Along the way, I've been blessed to have really, truly amazing and great mentors. Among them was Dr. Macklin McCarty, someone I know that none of you have ever heard of, probably. But Mac was a physician scientist at the Rockefeller University who proved in 1944 that DNA is the genetic material of life, the most important discovery of the 20th century, and enabling the discovery of the genetic code 10 years later by Watson and Crick. Mac was a physician scientist hired by John D. Rockefeller to try to find a better vaccine for strep pneumonia. And as a serendipitous finding, he discovered that DNA, a sugar, actually carried the genes of life. And Mac gave me the opportunity to start the first clinical program in Alzheimer's disease at Rockefeller in 1981, 75 years after Alzheimer described it, Alzheimer also being a physician scientist. Another physician scientist mentor that I had was Dr. Robert Butler, and he greatly influenced me. He wrote a book in 1975 called Aging in America, Why Survive? And it was the first book written about the coming epidemic of Alzheimer's disease and aging in our country. He won the Pulitzer Prize for that, and from that he lobbied Congress to start the National Institute on Aging in 1976. He was the founder of basically all of the funding for modern research in our country and even throughout the world. When he got there, our government was giving out $625,000 at a time for Alzheimer's disease at a time when we were spending billions of dollars on heart disease and cancer. I was lucky to work with Bob at the first department of geriatric medicine, which he also founded at Mount Sinai. He was an incredibly generous, amazing person with a vision of old age that was just so incredible. His vision of old age was amazing. He believed in productivity, and he was a founding member of our board of directors. And of course, I've learned an amazing amount from my private practice, my small practice, that one of my mentors told me, never give up your practice because the patients will always remind you why you're doing your research. And my patients have always inspired me, and I've loved them, and I'm very grateful to all of my patients for what they've taught me. But there are also those exceptional people without Alzheimer's disease that I've known over the years, people living into their 90s and 100s with joy and spirit despite their disabilities. I know one 92-year-old woman today who is still working and who just got a 30-year mortgage. It's true. I know an 87-year-old man who is dating 3 women. Now, I couldn't date, I have trouble with one, and as George Burns once said when asked what it's like to be 100, he said it's really good to be 100 because after 100, very few people die. And I'll give you one more, which is a true story. I was having lunch the other day with a board member of a local assisted living facility here in New York. He was telling me that they have 600 beds in their facility, and 30 of those people in the facility are over the age of 100. So every year, they honor these centenarians with a party. And when they went into the dining room where the party was happening, Alice wasn't there. So they panicked. They thought Alice had died. And they went running back to her room, and there's Alice sitting in a chair, sipping a scotch. And they said, Alice, why didn't you come to the centenarian party for all the people over 100? And she said, well, I'm so embarrassed, but I told my boyfriend I'm only 93 and a half. Now, but this is the goal. This is the goal of what we're trying to do, okay? These real persons are the symbols and the vision of the future we want to achieve. They are the goal. How will we get there? In 1998, Leonard and Ronald Lauder asked me to create and build an organization to fund and assist scientists all over the world to accelerate drug discovery for Alzheimer's disease. And as a result of their foresight, today the ADDF is the leading philanthropy in the world dedicated to accelerating the discovery of new drugs for Alzheimer's disease. We've heard from Nancy Corzine and Leonard about the brain imaging test that we helped to bring. It's a good example of not only our science, but also our interest in diagnostics and accelerating drug development through biomarkers. And it's enabled the recent Biogen trial that added $40 billion to their market cap was really very much the first trial that actually used the test to make sure that people with Alzheimer's disease went into the trial, because prior to that, 30%, 35% of people who went into Alzheimer's trials to test Alzheimer's drugs turned out they didn't have Alzheimer's disease. So you can imagine each clinical trial for Alzheimer's costs $400 million, and you have to do 2 of them to even think about an FDA approval, and when your methodology is so terrible, we're going to fail. So this was the first trial that succeeded, and there were other reasons maybe why it succeeded, but a very important reason was because of that brain imaging test. It was a requirement to get into the trial for the first time. Now, there's a really incredible hope for the future, even the near future, for research on new drugs. Research on Alzheimer's disease is accelerating all over the world, and we are internationally recognized for taking risk, for providing expert advice and assistance with our 4 neuroscientists on staff, and supporting the early stage development of new drugs. And many of the drugs, as was mentioned, are going into clinical trials. But we also work through partnering and co-investing with foundations, companies, investors, and governments all over the world. Organizations such as the Alzheimer's Society of the United Kingdom, Pfizer, the Dolby Family Venture Fund, the Harrington Institute out of Cleveland, the National Institute on Aging, and many, many others. And we've developed this unique model of venture philanthropy where all of our grants and biotech investments, and we've made 67 of them, are done so that we can receive returns on our research that can be recycled into more research. But we need to keep at it. And we've all heard the statistics. It's just that the epidemic keeps getting worse. Recent studies that I've heard about indicate that people at age 80 are twice as likely today to get Alzheimer's disease as they are to have a heart attack. And there's more. In 2013, it was estimated by new analysis that there were 500,000 deaths from Alzheimer's disease, and the number of deaths from Alzheimer's was rising. Now, to put this in perspective, in that same year, from all causes of heart disease, there were only 610,000 deaths, and only 150,000 from heart attacks. And there were 575,000 deaths from all causes of cancer, including 40,000 deaths from breast cancer and 27,000 deaths from prostate cancer, the two of the leading causes of cancer in men and women. So 500,000 Alzheimer deaths. And one day soon, it's clear that progressive dementia from Alzheimer's disease could be the leading cause of death in the elderly. Just imagine a world like that. You've all seen it. Imagine that. Ironically, we've already created a world in which the unintended consequence of our medical success is that the aging survivors of our medical success are suffering the cruel indignities of progressive dementia in the final full decade or more of their lives. That's a lot of a person's life, and it's the final full decade. So our vision is to create a world of older people who, despite arthritis and some heart disease, and maybe even surviving a cancer or two, have the mental vitality to continue to contribute productively to society. So we can give back with our wisdom and our experience and provide a legacy of love to our families and friends until the very end of all our days. ADDF could not have accomplished what we have done over these years without you, without all of you. Many of you have been incredibly generous with your time, with your resources, and with your efforts, and we thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. We've made incredible progress. In my professional lifetime, Alzheimer's has gone from a disease never mentioned or heard of in medical or scientific hallways to one that is critically important and recognized by societies and individuals all over the world with many drugs in development. But we still have a lot of work to do. We are still engaged in an age-old battle against the night. Until we develop safe and effective drugs that not only treat but prevent dementia from Alzheimer's disease, our work, both yours and mine, is not done. So thank you to all of you for the honor of this award, but much more importantly, thank you for enabling the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation to continue our work to accelerate the discovery of new drugs for Alzheimer's disease. Thank you very much.